Hi everyone! Are you ready for another science lesson? Are you ready to be delving a little bit more deeply into the rainforest ecosystem? An ecosystem being a community of plants, animals, habitats and microorganisms and how they work together in an area. We'll be looking at particularly producers and consumers today, and we'll be looking at this in a little bit more detail later, as these are some of our key vocabulary that we'll be focusing on. But before we go any further, I wanted to look at this amazing place called the rainforest. As an ecosystem, it really is a very special space on our Earth. It makes up nearly 2/3 of all the Earth's plant species. That's over half of the different plants that you can find will be found in a rainforest. Look how lush and green this small snapshot of a very tiny part of a tropical rainforest is. Absolutely breathtaking. Now, often you will hear some grown-ups and some people around the world call our rainforests the lungs of the Earth. Think, just have a quick think. Why might we call them lungs of the Earth? What is it that we know about plants and trees in general that will help us with our breathing? Yes, they give off oxygen. They take in carbon dioxide and they get rid of oxygen. What a key part to our world these rainforests are. Now, of course, they also provide us with lots of other things. We think about bananas and chocolate. Couldn't live without chocolate. But they also provide us with lots of our medicines. Lots of our medicines come from plants that have been grown in the rainforest. See, absolutely a special place. And without it, we would be truly lost. Now, today you are going to need a pencil or a pen, a ruler, or some paper or your workbook if you've been asked to do your learning in your books. Please pause it now if you need to go and get anything. If not, let's begin. So, our key vocabulary today is energy. What is energy? We've talked a lot about food and how we might eat food and to get our energy up. A producer and a consumer. Have you ever heard of consumer before? Maybe when you've been out shopping, perhaps. So, what do all organisms need to survive? We talked about organisms. They are living things, absolutely. They are individual living things. So what is it that all organisms need to survive? What can they not do without? Air, very important. Water. And food of some sort, some way of getting energy, because without those things, our organisms, our living things, would not be able to move or grow or reproduce, any of these things, because they would not have the energy. Energy is really, really key, and that comes from our food. So, how do we as humans get our energy? When we're feeling tired and we just need a little bit of a boost, how do we get our energy? Did you say food? Absolutely. We eat our food, and if it's not something like ice cream or chocolate, which isn't so healthy all the time, but a little treat every now and then is not so bad. We need to make sure we have our balanced diet to keep our bones being built, our muscles repairing, and to give us energy through the day to be able to face whatever it is that we need to face. That is the same for all animals in the animal kingdom. All animals need food, and they do not get their energy in any other way. We call animals, and we are included in this animal, consumers. Animals consume, eat. Animals consume plants and or other animals to gain energy. Animals can't make their own energy. They have to eat to get that energy, and we call that consuming. Animals are consumers. Say it with me. Animals are consumers, and that means we eat to get our energy. We cannot make it ourselves. Without our food, we really would not survive. So, if animals are consumers and they eat to get their food, how do plants get their energy? Because they don't have a mouth to eat with. How do plants get their energy? You might need to be thinking and unlocking in your brain a little bit here. You're learning from other year groups. Think about plants and growing. How do plants get their energy? Absolutely. Plants get their energy from the sun. The sunlight comes down and it hits the plants and they soak up water, and in leaves and its stem they create its own energy. And we call that photosynthesis. Now, a plant is a producer. We call it a producer because it gives its own energy using sunlight. Plants are producers. What are plants? Did I hear you? Producers? Excellent. They produce their own energy using sunlight. Now, plants are producers and we, animals, are consumers. We eat. In your books, could you please now draw a simple table with consumer and producer on each side? And I'd like you now to have a look at our rainforest ecosystem and look at this community of birds and plants and habitats and microorganisms and find the consumers and producers that you can see in there. You're going to want to pause this in a moment just to make sure you can collect them all. Ready? Pause. Which producers, plants that produce their own energy, and which consumers, animals which eat to get their energy, did you find? Well, here are some of the ones that I found. In the red circles, you will see, sorry about that, you will see all of our animals which are consumers, animals which need to eat to find their energy. Now, I haven't circled all the butterflies and the frogs, but you will see generally they are all included. Producers are often the green leaves in the rainforest, the plants that grow and produce their own energy. But some, which we cannot see, really, really tiny things we can't see. Anyone remember what that might be called? Microorganisms are also producers. Things like algae create their own energy within themselves and they use sunlight to do that. So, underneath the table that you have just drawn, I would like you please to think about the definitions we have just been speaking about. Organisms, which are individual living things, need and to survive. What do organisms need to survive? Organisms need and to survive. Producers make their own using sunlight. Producers make their own using sunlight. Gain energy by eating and other animals. Gain energy by eating and other animals. Pause this video in a second if you need some time to write this out and to fill in the blanks. Use the pictures to help you if you need to. Okay, let's see if you got them right. Organisms need air, they need water and energy to survive. Excellent, well done. Producers make their own energy using sunlight. Consumers gain energy by eating plants and other animals. Check now that you've got them all correct. And if you haven't, that's fine. Just put a neat line through and correct your work. Well done. So, how do producers exactly make their own energy? Photosynthesis, that process that you will have learned about when you were learning about plants and how plants grow. Photosynthesis is a process, something that happens, a scientific process that happens within plants that converts energy from the sun into energy for the plant to grow. Here is a diagram that you can have a look at to see what is needed for photosynthesis to happen. Water is soaked up from the soil through the roots, and it goes up through the stems and into the leaves. Light comes from the sun, and that's where the energy comes in. And within the leaves, there's a special thing called chlorophyll, which helps create a reaction. Carbon dioxide, air, we talked about air and living things needing air, is also used in the reaction that happens in the leaves. And from that reaction, oxygen is released. Remember the lungs of the rainforest? Oxygen is released and the sugar and energy is formed. And that helps the plant to grow. Water is soaked up through the soil, through the roots, up through the stem into the leaves. Light comes onto the leaves, and carbon dioxide is there as well to support this reaction that takes place in the leaves. Chlorophyll is the bit that makes it green. Oxygen is released and sugar is formed, which helps create the energy for plants to grow. Your task, underneath your sentence that you have just written explaining exactly what a producer and a consumer is, I'd like you to create a diagram to show how producers, what are producers? Plants, get their energy. Step 1, you need to draw your plant. It's a scientific drawing, so you will be thinking about a diagram rather than a pretty picture. You will need the basic things: soil, roots, stem, some leaves. If you want to include a flower, you could, but you don't need one. And you're going to need an extra thing, the sun. Without the sun, there will be no photosynthesis. Once you have drawn your diagram, you are going to label that with some scientific language. I've put some on the screen for you to use. You might want to go into a bit more detail. What happens from the light energy? Where does it go? Why is the oxygen important? But that's up to you. Once you have created your diagram and it is labeled with scientific language that is on the screen, please write a sentence about what photosynthesis is. Photosynthesis is the process of plants making their own Press pause now. How did you get on? Hope your diagrams were very, very carefully labelled and looked a little bit like this. Remember the water being soaked in from the roots, the fact that we had light coming in from the sun, that was an energy, and in the leaves there was use of carbon dioxide in the chlorophyll, and a reaction takes place in which oxygen is taken out of the plant and sugar and energy is formed. Check your diagram. Okay, finally, a little test. You don't need to draw this table. I just want you to be shouting at the screen. Maybe not shouting. There'll be other people who might be working near you. Perhaps just tell the monitor exactly what this is. So there are organisms on one side, and you can say whether the organism is a producer or a consumer. What's an organism? A living thing. Excellent. So here we have the first organism in this flytrap. Is it a producer? Does it produce its own energy or does it consume? This is a tough one. It does produce, but it can also consume because it eats those flies. Butterfly is a consumer. Trees, producers. Sloth, consumer. And that last picture is algae. Do you remember what we said about algae? A producer. Excellent, well done. So in our ecosystems are made up of a community of plants, animals, habitats, and microorganisms. Some of those bits will be producers, plants will be producers, and some of them are consumers. That will be your animals. Let's have a think at the end of today's session. What is energy? Why is energy important? It helps all organisms to survive. Without energy, we wouldn't be able to grow. A producer. What's a producer? A plant, an organism that can make its own energy. An organism that makes its own energy. Plants are producers, absolutely. Consumer. Brilliant. Consumers are animals that eat for energy. Without being able to eat, they would have no energy and then they would not survive. So that's the end of today's lesson. In the next session, we are going to be looking at how producers and consumers work together. And we'll be learning how to show that in a diagram. Right. See you soon. Bye.